God on Christianity became a human being. And to be a human being, you must have a body. And what bodies do is constrain the way that minds perceive things. But God is an unconstrained thing. He has no limitations. So what sense would it make to say Jesus, being God, took on a body? That would imply a contradiction, that an unlimited being took on limitations.
All right, it's interesting that he said an unlimited being. If we understand the Christian worldview that God has all power, then why couldn't God choose to constrain himself if he wanted to? Yes, Jesus took on some constraints, but he could know things from a distance. He could heal from a distance. So it's a false analogy to compare our embodiedness with the Creator when he takes on human flesh and enters into a human body. There's a tension here, but there's no contradiction.
Hey, Sean, I appreciate your response to Danny. I did a response video to this very subject matter, so I appreciate you also for chiming in on this conversation. But brother, I think you missed it here. I think you missed the opportunity to really respond to Danny in a more sufficient manner. So we have to remember what Danny said is that somehow God, by taking on human form, has limited himself and put constraints on himself. And that's just simply not true. The idea of constraints means that he was unable to do something because of this. So if we're talking about God himself being limited by taking on human form, or being constrained by taking on human form, we have to force Danny to be able to show this biblically. If Danny cannot show this biblically, then he's up a river without a paddle. But you and I know that biblically speaking, Jesus, even in human form, was not constrained. And Jesus was never constrained because of the human form that he was in. Remember, in the Gospels, Jesus was able to do everything that we would expect God to be able to do. And Jesus was able to heal. He was able to foretell the future. He was able to walk on water. He was able to control the weather. That doesn't sound like anybody that's limited to me. So we can see clearly through the Gospels that even in human form, God was not limited or constrained, not one bit. The only understanding of limitation that we may see in the Gospels is the idea of Jesus emptying himself. Once again, this is not because he was in human form he was constrained or limited. This is because he emptied himself, which is called kenosis. Jesus didn't stop being God. He didn't stop being man. He was fully God and fully man. But kenosis would imply that he emptied himself. He emptied himself. He gave up some of his glory in order to atone for sin and to save men like you and I from the wrath of God.